Well, joining me live now is Freshwater Strategy Director and UK pollster and strategist, Dr. Mike Turner, and he joins me here in the studio. Now, you did some polling for Liz Truss in this 8-week Conservative Party ballot. What do her people, the Tories, think of her, and how is she going to reach across the aisle in a general election?
Well, that's pretty easy. Her supporters see her as a true Conservative. And I think that's the important debate here, is that I think that the message that the Sunak campaign was trying to get across wasn't simple. It was a little bit complex, and therefore it didn't really fit in too well for that type of campaign. Whereas Truss, who's being advised pretty well, if I don't say so myself, you know, basically ended up simplifying her message to kind of core Conservative values. And clearly that was very attractive, and, you know, it helped maintain her win. Albeit she didn't win as strongly as was polling a few weeks ago.
Yeah, so there was 20,000 difference or so votes in it. But you say she campaigned as a true Conservative, but in a general election, does a Conservative get those votes in the middle, on the red wall, where she needs to win?
Yeah, well, actually, I think in the UK, because it's not compulsory turnout, I do believe that you can win as a true Conservative. It needs to be a bit more nuanced than just replicating what Thatcher did or just trying to copy what Boris Johnson did in 2019. But certainly there is a pathway there, and it might be slightly different to what's been done in previous elections since Cameron, May and Boris. But certainly there is an opportunity there. Whether or not it's an 80-seat stonking majority that Boris Johnson delivered in 2019, I don't know, but certainly there is an opportunity.
It's amazing that you talk about that 80-seat stonking majority and Boris Johnson rolled in such a comprehensive way by his own party. I mean, they were vicious on the way out, trying to make sure that he couldn't be a Lazarus. What do you think? Well,
that is very interesting. I mean, also, it was pretty interesting in her speech that she gave yesterday. She did give a nod to Boris Johnson to say, you know, you've been a great success as Prime Minister. And in part, I think that is a signal to say that she is going to respect his legacy. But I also think there could be a bit of a problem with if Boris decides to stick around in Parliament. Obviously, there'll be potential opportunities for someone who's had such a colourful life as Boris to go out there on the speaking circuit and kind of, you know, take on public events.
You could just write a column and it'd be devastating.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's plenty of opportunities for Boris Johnson for sure. But if he does decide to stay, I wouldn't rule out an opportunity in the future.
Okay, so how does he do that then? Do you think he just looms large over Liz Truss' premiership now? Or does he give her the air and just put himself in a position to strike if she fails?
No, I don't think he'll be going for it for a while. He's still pretty young. I think there's two examples to consider. First of all, David Cameron. After the referendum, he left pretty quickly and left Parliament, and he wasn't there really to defend his record. And actually, his popularity waned significantly. I do believe probably the right approach is to take the Theresa May approach, which is to stick around, be statesmanly, support people, you know, if you think what they're doing is correct, but also defend your record. And Boris Johnson has an excellent record to defend. There obviously were mistakes, which were part of the reason for him leaving. But I think that, you know, there is still a long and fruitful career for Boris Johnson if he wants one.
Yeah, that's true. I reckon he might stay around, but, you know, it's just a prediction at this point. Mike, the energy crisis in the UK, I mean, it is profound. You're looking at price rises that are absolutely extraordinary and unaffordable, not just for the working poor, but for a huge chunk of Britons. How did you get to this point?
Yeah, well, it's basically come down to supply and demand. Ultimately, the supply is being shortened, you know, particularly gas. And prices are rocketing as a result because what's going on in Eastern Europe right now with Ukraine and Russia. And, you know, clearly there is an issue that needs to be resolved pretty quickly. We also have problems at the moment with these energy caps being more than doubled what they were just a year ago, and they really are entering a state now of absolute crisis. perhaps now is not the time really that you'd like to be taking the new office of Prime Minister. It might be a bit of a poison chalice for Liz Truss.
Yeah, it might be, absolutely. And already, I mean, she said, and she spelt it out, I campaigned on conservative values and I will govern as a conservative. But her first order of business is essentially to pay out huge amounts, billions upon billions of taxpayer funds to ease the energy crisis. I mean, her first order of business is not actually a conservative one, is it?
No, I mean, you raised a good point. Ultimately, Liz has said that the first order of the day would be to cut taxes. She doesn't want to give handouts out. And actually, the first action that she's announced since winning has been to give out £100 billion, about $180 billion worth of support, and she's going to outline that in the next few days.
How does that go down with the base?
Well, I think it basically comes down to a pragmatism. She's taken on the office now. She's realised that was a campaign. She's signalled her intentions. No one's in any doubt that she's a tax cutter. No one's in any doubt that she's a true Conservative because she has behaved that way in her 10 years in the government. But I think she understands just how critical this energy crisis is right now. And if Liz Truss is promising £100 billion, then you know that people are in a problem in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Mike Turner, great to talk to you. Check in soon.